talking a lot about school performance. Today, our guest is Matt Audette, a relatively new school board member at Anoka-Hennepin School Board. We're Kendall and Sheila Qualls, and this is Fully Charged.
Well, you've decided to run, and we'd love to hear about your decision to do that. I mean, what made you decide to run for school board, Matt?
I was participating a lot with other people in the community who were concerned with the distance learning. I was myself concerned with it, and after months and months and months of really struggling through that, it caused me to want to become involved in decision making at the school board level, because I didn't like what was happening with the pandemic. And as we looked into it more deeply, we became aware of other issues that were happening in schools, like many parents did across the country. CRT was a big focus in my race, and remains a big focus of mine today. And so it was kind of a convergence of a number of issues that were big in schools that caused me to go from a parent who was participating, much like most parents, living a busy life, doing my job, and not having direct involvement with schools, into thinking that I needed to get involved because I wanted to change the course of what was happening.
So parents are, as we know, especially recently, have been going to school boards quite a bit. Being a school board member now, how much power do school boards really have?
Well, that's a great question. Of course, as an individual, a school board member doesn't have a whole lot of power, but the board itself, when the board acts together, has a lot of power. School boards ultimately decide things like the curriculum that will be taught to children on all the variety of subjects. They create policy for the school district, so they decide, the kind of the rules of the road, if you will, for how the district will run. They set the strategic direction of the schools, so they ultimately decide what will be focused on, whether it's operations of the school or buildings, grounds and things like that. They set the budget, and probably one of the biggest and most important things that school boards do is they hire the superintendent. So they ultimately decide who will be running the school system. So a lot of power, if you really think about it.
Well, what's interesting to me is just our short time involvement. The biggest surprise for me has been the acrimony that I've just seen and witnessed between the relationship between parents and the school board members and the responses there. What's been one of your biggest surprises as a school board member?
Yeah, I would agree with you. Actually, that would be, I would phrase it a little different, but it is ultimately the influence that the large national teachers unions have on the operations of schools. And they have a very defined political and social agenda that is in many ways not even related to school things, but the influence that they have on the overall operation of what I'll call the big education, the big public education system, from what issues are important in schools, all the way down through what sorts of programs and curriculums will be put through the schools. And so why I think that you see that acrimony is because a great deal of school boards are made up of members who ultimately got elected based upon their alignment with. They had the endorsement of the large teachers unions, and so they are there based upon their involvement with that, and so their agendas tend to be aligned with what the teachers unions agendas are. And as parents have come to learn more and more about what those agendas are, and that they're not aligned with what most parents or many parents are feeling they want to see from their schools, which, I think as a parent myself, and I know your parents, is what all of us want, is we want our kids to be educated. And the political and the social agendas are things that are not aligned with parents. And so as parents have found this out over the recent years and have come forward and want to try to talk to the school boards about what's happening, you see that lack of alignment in it, and it comes out sometimes in a pretty emotional and heated way. And so it doesn't feel like there's enough of a partnership. It feels like parents are frustrated with the agenda, and they're having a difficult time impacting it. And so it's causing a lot of tension.
So, based on what you've just told us and your experiences, what are some of the things that you would like to see changed?
I think probably the biggest thing I'd like to see changed is related to what I just spoke about. Our schools should be focused on academic excellence, which probably has many different definitions, but the way I would define it is to say that, the job of the schools ought to be to get from an academic perspective, ought to be able to create an environment where every child can achieve at their fullest potential. And not every child's potential is the same, but the goal has to be to get every child to be able to achieve. And so to get there, a focus on that academic achievement should be paramount. You've got this whole equity and CRT argument. You've got all of those things going on. There's now a big agenda related to gender and the various LGBTQ issues that are being raised in schools. And so there's social emotional learning. There's a lot of different things that are taking up time, literally and figuratively, literally time during the day to where an instruction could be going on, and more on the figurative side of just the broader scope of the many things schools have gotten themselves involved in. But the focus on academics is really, I think, either being clouded or lost. I was reviewing statistics recently on academics and on just the performance, and third grade reading. Our kids are in Minnesota are 48% of children are proficient in reading. The scores look similar in math and science, and so the need to work and focus on the core academics is huge, and yet school districts all over are talking about the importance of many other issues. And so that would probably be the biggest change that I wish I could enact.
So Matt, first of all, two-part question. Do you think parents are really informed on what's really going on? And then the second part of that is, what message would you have to parents overall?
Well, the first part of your question, I think generally parents are not informed. I'll draw from my own experience as a parent and from my observation of parents as I interact with them now today as a board member. Generally, I think parents assume that what's happening in schools is kind of inherently good, and that at all times that whole system has the best interest of children in mind. And so I think whether parents believe that or want to believe that, there's a general trust, or there has been over time been just a trust that the best interests of children are always there. I don't think parents appreciate the impact that some of these outside forces are having on the education of their kids locally. And so you're seeing lots of issues that come up that aren't parent issues, that people can't figure out why they're there, but that are serious and that are being driven by forces that I don't think are fully aligned with what's best for kids. They're aligned with other things, and they see schools as a way to make a change in society by finding our little ones and getting into their minds early for a whole variety of reasons. And I don't think parents can fully grasp it. I think that the union's very effective at convincing people that they are there, they're the experts, they're the ones who are there, who care about their kids, but they have total other interests in mind. And so my message to parents would be, to study what's going on and to become involved and try to get a good understanding of what's happening, to pay close attention to what their kids are being taught, ask their children questions, look at their assignments that they're bringing home. Don't be so sure that what's happening in schools is always unfortunately is always in the best interest of your kids and your values. And I think the other would be, have the courage to stand up for what you think is right.
So, what advice would you give to someone who is running for school board? And also, can you just tell us a little bit about your campaign and what was most effective?
The advice I would give folks, first of all, is to start early. campaigns are, and you folks certainly know, campaigns are long and tiring processes. And to start early, to try to get organized and get ready for your campaign, and then try to just learn as much as you can about what campaigning is and what you're going to need to do. I think would be good. There's training that's available. I would tell folks who are considering to seek out some training, either formal training that's provided through various groups, or through informal training from somebody who's been through it before. And I think having a presence in your community is key. A big part of what was successful in my campaign really had been my own involvement. I think previously, going way back to when my kids were little, just being involved in local groups like Cub Scouts and church and various things. And it doesn't really matter which one of those things it is. And obviously, I guess I'm not trying to suggest that a person plans really early to get into politics and so then creates a career of it. But I think being involved in your community is key. And then being a voice. I had a pretty active presence on some social media groups that were parent focused during the pandemic, and that connected me pretty quickly to a lot of people. And so people sort of knew who I was. And then the ultimate thing is what you call boots on the ground, or just really having a physical presence during your campaign. I knocked on thousands of doors. I went to community events. I marched in parades. I did as much as I could to talk to people and let them know where I stand. And I think that would be the last thing is don't be afraid to tell people where you stand on issues.
I've got one more question. Parents are, like I said, always at school boards, and they are making their voices known, but it doesn't seem like there's any movement of the needle in terms of, school boards doing what parents want. So what do you think are some things parents can do effectively so that they can get the school boards to move in the direction that they want?
That's a tough question. The movement is, and I'm certainly experiencing it on my board. The movement can be slow because in order for a school board to act, it needs to have at least a majority of consensus on things. And so, I think parents want to believe that if a lot of us go to a board meeting and we make a lot of noise, then clearly the school board will listen to us and change course. And I think you could even make an argument that to some degree that is what should happen. But the reality is that, it matters who's on your school board. And so if they've got a different idea about what their priorities are than what the parents do, I would tell you it's probably unlikely that you're going to change their mind. And that's been really frustrating, I know, for the people in our community to see. There have been times when there have been many people at the board meeting. They've expressed concerns about something, and then if the board doesn't agree with that direction, they'll stay the course. And so people have to understand that if you want to see changes in the direction of things, and I'm speaking broadly, if we want to see schools go a different direction than we think they're going today, we're going to have to put people on our school boards who are aligned with what our values and thoughts are on it. And I think what people are waking up to find out is that right now, many of the people on their school boards are not aligned with those values. They're aligned with the values of someone else. And so change is going to be needed if we're going to want things to go in a different direction.
Okay.
Well, Matt, this has been terrific. Thank you for your time. Very insightful for parents and even for those people considering running for school board.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's it. Thanks for watching Fully Charged. We created this podcast to counter the prevailing narrative and to give you the other side of the story that you never hear. If you like this podcast and if you believe in what we're doing, please consider subscribing and giving us a 5-star rating. But most importantly, please share our podcast with your friends.
That's right. Well, that's it for this edition. To find out more about our work, go to our website at takechargemn.com and please consider supporting us. Your support helps us spread the message. We'll be back next week with a more perspective that you never hear.